Welcome to Category Visionaries, the show dedicated to exploring exciting visions for the future from the founders who are on the front lines building it. In each episode, we'll speak with a visionary founder who's building a new category or reimagining an existing one. We'll learn about the problem they solve, how their technology works, and unpack their vision for the future. I'm your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines Media. Now let's dive right into today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Category Visionaries. Today we're speaking with Katy Carrigan, CEO of Goody, a corporate gifting platform that's raised over $32 million in funding. Katy, how are you?
Great. Excited to be here, Brett.
Yeah, looking forward to this. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Talk to us about what you're building.
Yeah, absolutely. So Goody is a gifting platform that over 13,000 businesses are using to easily send gifts to their employees, clients, prospects. What really makes us different is that we've curated a really large marketplace of like high quality items that people actually want. What we often say, for so long, corporate gifting has been a bit more old school with like these fruit baskets, things that are often maybe end up in the trash or essentially wasteful. So really what we've done is we've made the process a lot easier to send those gifts. And we've created a marketplace of items that people actually want.
You know, every Christmas time or holiday time, I should say, to be safe, we end up getting a lot of these gift baskets from, our law firm, our CPA, and it's all just garbage stuff that, no one actually wants, no one actually needs. And it normally does just get thrown away, as you mentioned there. Why is corporate gifting so stuck in its old ways? I feel like it's the same gift baskets I've been receiving for 10 years now.
Yeah. So I think actually I want to bring it back to almost even our origin story as a company. So Goody started mainly as a consumer mobile app. And the idea was it was right in the heat of COVID. How can I easily send a gift to a family friend that I know they'll like? And that's a pretty cool, high quality good that you're seeing targeted on you on Instagram, TikTok. And so we started curating that marketplace with consumer in mind. And then we started to see as you put the product out in the world, I think a lot of startups, and you see how people actually use it. And people are actually using it in the business context. And I think all really good, particularly product-led growth B2B companies is that they realize on the other side, it's just consumer users. So people want really simple UX. And then in our case, where you're essentially shopping, you're just using your company's credit card to do the shopping. They want to see items that they're excited about and that they would buy with their own money.
One gifting situation that I have, whenever I'm talking with podcasts, they tell me that they've just had a kid or a child. I mail them this book, The Daily Dad, that I really like, and then a girl dad book. I just had a kid. So top of mind, I have this go-to kit. I have 50 of them sitting in the other room. And I've had to build this supply chain basically where someone tells me that, I make the package for them and then I mail it out. And it's a nightmare and it's a hassle. But the alternative, it was just ordering on Amazon, not having real note there. And then it doesn't feel authentic and real. So I think there's probably a lot of people who have these types of things similar to me, where it's not an ideal setup to get your gifts out, but you want to get gifts out and it's important. So I can feel the pain there of what you're trying to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of people I've talked to who actually have used their own homes as mail rooms and picking and packing centers is pretty insane. And then you talk about okay, well, we're going to create a Google form to go and collect everyone's addresses and sizes, or they don't even take that step and they just take whatever in their HR system and start sending stuff out. And the next thing you know, you get this photo in the company Slack, a bunch of raccoons got into our, this gift box. I haven't been home for 2 weeks to take it off the porch. So absolutely. It is truly there's the old school way that you talked about where people are sending gifts and maybe they're using a company to do those gift baskets. Then there's even older school way where people are just doing it at home. They are their own logistics center.
That's me. That's my house. There's got to be a better way.
There absolutely is. There absolutely is. And that's ultimately always our goal is that, gifting is innate to our culture. People are doing it all the time. Like you mentioned, it's an easy way to connect with someone, celebrate them, acknowledge a big life moment that's about to happen. So how do we do that and keep that sentiment and feeling as part of the action, but make it a lot easier for individuals?
I want to go back a little bit and talk about when you joined the company. So you joined in 2021 and you joined as head of sales. So it's a slightly different path than a lot of the people that we have on the podcast. So I want to talk about that. First, what did you see in this opportunity? What made you say, yep, that's it. I'm going to go and join this company in the first place?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know I often joke, I'm like, that escalated really quickly, head of sales to CEO. So I received a goodie. So that was like my first experience with it. I was sent a goodie and I was like, whoa, that's really sleek. Like I understand what problem they're trying to solve here. I love gift giving. So I was like, I could use this in my everyday life. And then I also really love like well-made product. I think that's a bit in my DNA from like Dropbox. And I'd say that's like the school of thought I grew up in. And I appreciated how slick they made the Goody experience. And so then when I started talking to the team, I got pretty excited about what they were building. And I started in a more of a consulting capacity with them. And after even working with the original founding team, it was like, okay, well, we don't only have an awesome product, you have an amazing team here as well. And so joined them full time to help them with the pivot from consumer to B2B.
Was this like a master plan? Like, had you talked about this with the founders that you were going to make your way into the CEO role, or did that really come out of nowhere?
I feel like maybe a little bit more of a plan on original founder CEO Ed, because he definitely saw that path and potential. I think I was a little bit more taken back and needed some convincing, but, just typical imposter syndrome. Like, how could what do you mean? How am I going to take on that role? Like, my niche is sales, but it's been really amazing over the last couple of years. And now I think I'd have a really hard time going back to more singular domain.
What was the biggest lesson that you've learned so far in making that transition from sales to CEO?
Yeah, I don't think this is groundbreaking at all for any leader, but it's so much about your team and trusting them. So, right in sales, and that's the area where I was building my career, I had all different types of experience from very early on days of being a BDR to being working in channel sales to doing like a deal desk job. So, I had this like really good knowledge base and expertise within a sales and revenue function. But now, as a CEO, I'm also overseeing engineering and finance and marketing and all of these functions that I maybe like collaborated with, but I'm no expert in. And so, what's really important to me is that my leaders that I have in each of those departments are people that I can like deeply trust and collaborate with, because I definitely won't have the answers into all of those areas.
Makes a lot of sense. So, at a very high level, what does the go to market strategy look like? And how have you seen that strategy evolve over the past 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. So we are product led growth, meaning that people can come, we want them to find us usually through word of mouth, SEO, SEM, sign up for Goody, and then start gifting. We have a small and mighty sales team, but for the most part, it is people coming to Goody on their own and like inbound for us. I think that has a lot to do with being more similar to like a marketplace business than a SaaS
Mhm.
business. So right? The margins are very different. It's not SaaS with 70% margin, right? Marketplace, I think strong ones are usually 30% plus there. And so in that, you can't just go and hire a sales army. So you have to find ways to really feed your funnel that don't require human capital.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode. What about from a growth perspective or just a marketing perspective? What are you doing to grow right now? Or how are you getting people, into the brand in the first place?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, SEM and SEO are very big for us. What's wonderful about Goody is gifting is very intent based. I think there's a lot of other new products on market where you actually have to like help make the intent or educate people on why to do it. As I mentioned earlier, gifting is sort of innate to culture. People are doing it anyway. So it's a lot about when they're going to do it. How do they know about you and make sure that they're then spending those dollars on your platform? And that means showing up when they're doing those searches. It means showing up in those communities for individuals. So back in very early days of Goody, when we were starting to make the pivot B2B, it really was taking this mobile app and putting it on to the web for the most part. And so we didn't have kind of like a robust technology with it. But what we did realize that, okay, who in the company is pulling purse strings, but maybe doesn't need a ton of like security features, permissions, et cetera, that we've now since built. And that was executive assistants. A lot of time people aren't building technology for executive assistants. But in this case, for us, they actually manage a lot of gifting for team events, for clients, for employees. babies, marriages, etc. And so what we did is we focused on like breaking into their communities through newsletters, through different professional groups, showing up at their conferences. And that was really great for us because it was an entry into a lot of larger companies. For then, as we built our product, we could go from the executive assistants to the HR and people teams to now
Mhm.
talk about more like company wide employee benefits, employee retention strategies, and really get the platform fully implemented. And now, similar, it's like, okay, so we EAs to HR. Now, how do we go into the sales and marketing department? So, a lot of our growth as well is happening coming from like the spread within a company.
Was it hard to make that decision to, focus on these groups kind of one by one? I have to imagine with your platform, it's like anyone can use it and everyone can use it. How did you make that decision of like, okay, EAs, we're going to really focus on them as a persona and as a buyer group?
Yeah, I think so. Goody really started to make the pivot to B2B at the end of 2021 and sort of like really started to cement it come 2022. Also, 2022 is particularly when tech started having a lot more of a difficult time when it comes to like fundraising and dollars spent. And there was all these signs like happening in market, knowing that for us to continue to not only just survive, but also grow and thrive since we were in our early years was I needed us to be extremely like focused on where we could win and how could we do it efficiently and effectively. So I think in like prior times where it's grow at any cost, like money's a bit more free, you can take a larger brand strategy of like, let's just have everybody know about Goody and go after everybody. But now in a time where you have to be much more methodical and think about like, what is my ROI? What's my CAC? And how do I reduce that? For us, it made the most sense of like, let's tackle these communities because it's a lot more manageable and to think about that growth than to have this massive, like, we'll take everybody on. I think you need a lot more money to do that.
How do you know when it's time to move into another community? Like, is there some way that you can measure that to be like, okay, in terms of like executive assistants, we've saturated that market. It's time to move to HR. Like, how do you make that decision of when it's time to move into the next community?
I think that's where you get to really listen to your customer base. So for us in going to in like EAs, it was then just naturally that we would start to get some people from those same companies who are in an HR people function, but they're asking maybe for something slightly different or they needed a little bit more out of the product. And the way I like to think about part of like using some customer feedback on our roadmap is I hear it once or twice, cool, take note. But then after I hear it like 5 or 6 times, like, okay, there's a pattern here. There's
Mhm.
something here, like we should probably explore it more. What's the MVP or what's the version of it that we can get out quickly to then validate to be like, okay, let's double down more and building for them. And we definitely found that in the HR and people company. You kind of like dip your toe a little bit in the water, start to get to know this audience more, what they're looking for. In doing that, we saw, okay, well, now this is helping to dictate our roadmap on what we should build for them next. And in doing that, we really are like growing that individual use case. And so now when I think about like sales and marketing, it's saying like that's the next one or maybe dipping our toes in the water a little bit on. We're looking at the customers who are just using us for that today to do it. How are they leveraging the product today? Where do they find success in it? Where do they wish the product did something slightly different? And talking to those individuals to learn more about the use case to see, okay, how can we do this in our current state? And a lot of times for us, that means we're probably focusing more on like SMB mid market as we're beginning to like get into a new category. And as we expand there, we're like, okay, well, what would the enterprise level need and function? And like, does it make sense for us to build that?
What's the key to breaking into these communities? So you had mentioned the executive assistants there. I'm part of a few founder communities. Like whenever someone comes in and starts trying to sell, they're immediately banned and blacklisted. And I think people can just see right through that. How do you break into a community in an authentic way?
Yeah, I think so. One, now it's probably a little bit different because I think community is like this hot topic. Everybody has a community, everyone wants to break into it, community selling. Here we are talking about it. There's like vocabulary around it. I would say when we first did this, particularly in early 2021, there wasn't such a like hot take around it or like everyone doing it, which made it a little bit easier, right? To always when you can be at the front of it. And then, particularly as I mentioned, we were talking to individuals who were not typically getting sold to. So they were excited about new technology that could make their jobs easier. And I also think I have like a very realistic point of view of like often where our tools sit and it's like helping a job to be done. And so I have this sometimes where someone's like, oh, do you want to meet this like CHRO of this enterprise company? Yeah, I'd love to meet them and talk to them and learn about their goals, but it's not going to be that person who decides to use the tool. I think you also need to really understand who is your end user and where do they sit within their company and what are their goals and how do you help them reach their goals, right? This is all about what I say is often like making people look like the hero inside the office. And so that can be people for us that are more like mid-level and junior, and they often don't get the same benefits as maybe a founder does. So they're excited to get free gifts and goodies.
And when it comes to milestones, I know you recently crossed 50,000 users. What do you think you've gotten right? I'm sure any founder, any builder, any CEO that's listening in, they want to be able to say they have 50,000 users. So how did you pull it off? Talk just about what you think you've really gotten right.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been very, very concentrated on our funnels, one particularly being acquisition. So as I mentioned earlier, we're using like SEM as our strategy for acquisition. A lot of our users are that way. Well, if we're going to be paying people to land on particular marketing pages, how do we ensure that we have really high conversion? And that's through a lot of A/B testing. So something that we've definitely embraced, I would say a lot in the last 12 to 18 months is constantly testing from simple things of moving the button to completely new page layouts to see how can we be super effective of signing up individuals. So that's one. The second one is referral. So we introduced our referral program in Q4 of last year. And in doing so, it's really helped increase our user count and also in a very like affordable manner as well, which is exciting. So I think ensuring that like you can have a strong referrals program in place is like highly recommended. And when I say strong, again, you're asking people to recommend your product. So where have they found a ton of value in using your product? So is it potentially after, like, let's say with Goody, it's like after the first time they successfully sent a gift that's been accepted. Okay, they just felt all of that value, how easy it was. Now is a great time to refer someone. We definitely have it in our favor that if you refer people, right, you get a monetary reward that you can spend on Goody, you get your own gifts. But that's something we can even help people with if you're looking to do a referral program. People can receive goodies after referring X amount of users.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their US and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
What did you learn from building out that referral program? Like, were there any like mistakes that you made or like, oh God, like if I ever do this again, I'm definitely not going to do that?
Yeah. So I think one that I just mentioned there is like, just because like you love your product or you think it's amazing doesn't mean, everyone else always does. And you have to prove yourself to them, right? So ensuring that when you're asking for the referrals, it's in the right moments in their user journey. So making sure you're not too early on in those referrals, making sure it's not too late would interrupt some sort of workflow. And then the second one that we also, okay, you kind of find maybe a sweet spot, but how do you make it as easy as possible? So when we initially did a referral program, I think it was like a link that you would copy and paste and then you'd have to send it to someone. Okay, well, now you have to like copy this link and type up a bunch of words with context to that individual. So we then made it easier. Well, all you have to do is put in the individual's email and we'll take automatically sending that email, giving them context on what this program is and inviting them in. So I think those are like just always really good principles to have when thinking about the building there is like, when is it appropriate in the flow and how do you make it as easy as possible for the end user?
And when it comes to your positioning and just the category that you're in, how are you thinking about the positioning? So to give you a little bit of context there, we had Chris on, the founder of Sendoso, and I believe he called it a sending management platform. That's what they were doing, and it was not corporate gifting. How are you thinking about the market category that you're in today? And then how are you thinking about the category you're going to be in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think gifting is a really easy way to describe it today. And I am pretty comfortable with that term. And we'll often even refer to ourselves as a corporate gifting platform. So very okay if someone wants to put us into that category. I do think there's something bigger here. I often think about it as like multi-party commerce. And that's maybe where it goes into our like longer term vision of that. We're not only looking to own the gifting use case in the corporate side of the house. That's definitely our path right now and what I can see in the next year or two. But in longer term vision, as we become that $1 billion company, I want Goody to be on everybody's phone and people using us in their personal lives to send gifts, moments of appreciations to their friends and family, and also turning around and using that same product in the workplace. There's like a really beautiful cycle that can happen when you have multiple people involved in a transaction to really build a powerful flywheel.
Perfect. Two more questions here on gifting. How do you make sure that they're gifts that people actually want? I think my house is just full right now of gifts that, for our baby that like we didn't want. We don't know what to do with them. Like
Yeah.
we literally have a pile sitting by the door of stuff that I feel guilty throwing it away, but also too lazy to go and like take it, like donate it properly. So we have a lot of gifts, no point of having those gifts. Like, how do you get that right? How do you make sure it's a gift someone actually wants?
Yeah, we have something called the gift of choice on our platform. It's our number one selling SKU or product, you could say, in that all you have to do is go in and set a budget that you want to spend on the recipient or recipients and send it off. And then they have the option to choose what they want for exactly what you're describing. So many people end up with items they don't want, they can't use, and it's really just wasteful. So, really, with the gift of choice, we recommend it all the time to businesses. You'd be hard pressed to find a company that can settle on one item that all of their employees want, even if it's a company of like 5 people. So the gift of choice really comes in that allows individuals to pick exactly what they want. And then we've learned from that too is that, okay, well, maybe you don't want to give people so many choices. So we have some functionality too where companies want to, they can curate that selection down to only be a couple of items, 10 items, whatever they think is right for their gifting event.
And then how does that work? Do I get an email notifying me that I'm going to receive a gift and I choose the options, or I receive the gift and then I can go and swap it out if I want to swap it out?
Yeah.
From a user perspective.
Yeah. So it is. There's what we call like the digital unwrapping that happens of
Mhm.
the item, which also makes it a really good platform for any like last minute type gifting. As I always say, is like you're never too late with a goodie. So it's really awesome. The individual can receive an email, a text, or if you want to send it via link, they go through the unwrapping, which includes a fun card, your personal message to them, and then they'll have all of those options to choose from. They'll get to choose their gift. And if it's anything that has a variant, as in like a size, a color, a flavor, your recipient gets to choose that, put in their own address, and we'll take care of the rest.
Amazing. Now, one hard question for you here. What is the best corporate gift you've ever received?
Ooh, okay. Actually, it's funny you asked that. We just had a webinar today where we were going over some of like our gifts and holiday trends. And I was just about to post like something on LinkedIn also. So Therabody makes wonderful products. I love this mini branded Theragun, use it all the time. It's like just as powerful as the larger Therabody, great for recovery. So this is at the top of the list. If you have a bit of a higher budget, this is a $200 plus item. If you have a little bit of a lower budget, and sorry, I didn't mean to make this QVC for you, but here we are.
This was not planned, by the way. For the listeners, we did not plan this.
This is the Fellow to Go cup. This has actually been, even on the personal side, my go-to gift these last few months. Right, you may be familiar with Fellow. They're a San Francisco-based company.
Yep.
They make some of the most like beautiful drinkware, their coffee products, their tea products. I have the Stag electric kettle. That's another like maybe high end, but this has been really
That's the one.
awesome. Yeah. I have some more around me, but again, I won't turn this into a full like show and tell for you all. But yeah, for those listening, Therabody and Fellow are two really great brands to give.
Amazing. And final question. Let's zoom out 3 to 5 years into the future. What's the big picture vision look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so as I mentioned earlier, that the gifting market's massive. So absolutely in 3 to 5 years can see us being that $1 billion company. And the goal here is, right, like Goody's a verb, right? I'm going to send a goodie or I just received a goodie. It's this common thing that, you'll walk into a cafe or you'll be on a plane and you'll see that people receiving or are talking about when there's an event. So I really see it, the opportunity to own gifting across the board. So whether it's corporate gifting, the hope is in the next few years as we continue to grow our corporate gifting, we'll be able to further invest in our consumer gifting. Again, we still have our mobile app. It works. It's wonderful. I still use it all the time. I have a number of friends and we have customers who use it all the time. I'm excited to reinvest more in that, but really just truly own the gifting space.
Amazing. I love it. And I have to say, I love the name too. Goody just like sounds fun to say. I think it's hard to say that with a frown on your face. So got a great name, great story. Really love this conversation. It's been awesome. Before we wrap up, if there's any founders listening in that want to follow along, where should we send them? Where should they go?
Yeah, definitely. Find me on LinkedIn, Katy Carrigan. Shoot me an email, katyky@ongoody.com.
Amazing. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Brett.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.